The name at the bottom of the application stack stopped him cold. Jin Wu Park had survived federal investigations, hostile takeovers, and late-night calls from men who didn't use last names. Nothing had ever made him freeze. Until tonight. Until a standard custodial application, sitting in a folder on his 42nd floor desk at midnight, carried a name he had spent 7 years trying to forget. A name that belonged to the only woman he had ever loved. The same woman whose career he had destroyed. And now she was applying to clean his floors. Stay with me to the end, because what happened next changed both of their lives in ways neither of them saw coming. The application hit Jin Wu Park's desk at 11:47 on a Tuesday night. He had not asked to see it. In a company employing 4,000 people across 6 countries, the CEO did not personally review custodial applications. That task belonged 3 levels down the organizational chart, buried in the routine machinery of human resources, where decisions about mop schedules and background checks happened without fanfare or executive oversight. But Lucas Lyle, his head of security, and one of only 2 people in the building who understood exactly what Jin Wu's family name actually represented, had walked into his office carrying a manila folder and placed it on the glass desk between them without saying a word. Jin Wu looked up from the shipping manifests he had been reviewing. Lucas stood with his hands clasped behind his back, his expression giving away nothing except the specific quality of stillness that meant the thing he was not saying was more important than anything he could say. "What is this?" Jin Wu asked. "Page 3, Lucas said. Employment history." Jin Wu opened the folder. The name at the top of the application stopped time in a way that federal raids and intercepted communications and late-night calls from Seoul never had. Kendra Jovovich. He read it once, then again, then a third time, as though repetition might reveal that his eyes had assembled the letters incorrectly, that the universe had not suddenly compressed 7 years of distance into a single piece of paper sitting on his desk at midnight in a city where he had convinced himself she would never appear. Jin Wu stood up. He walked to the floor-to-ceiling window overlooking Seattle's downtown corridor and held the folder against the glass, as if the light from 42 stories below might change what was written on it. It didn't. Kendra Jovovich, age 34, current residence, Rainier Valley. Position applied for, custodial services, evening shift. Education, Bachelor of Science, Chemical Engineering, Massachusetts Institute of Technology. Previous employment, file clerk, overnight stock associate, nursing home custodian. The gap between those 2 lines, between MIT and mopping floors, contained a story Jin Wu knew by heart because he had written most of it himself without ever meaning to. Lucas cleared his throat quietly. "Do you want me to handle this?" Jin Wu turned from the window. His face had returned to the expression he wore in negotiations, in depositions, in rooms where showing emotion was the same as showing weakness. But his hands, still holding the folder, were not quite steady. "No," Jin Wu said. "Process the application. Standard clearance. Night shift. Executive floors." Lucas hesitated. It was the first time in 6 years that Jin Wu had seen him hesitate. "Are you certain that's wise?" Jin Wu looked down at the name again, at the careful handwriting, at the address in a neighborhood where rent was cheap and futures were harder to build than in the places people like him usually thought about. "I'm not certain of anything," he said quietly, "but approve it anyway." Lucas nodded once and left. Jin Wu stood alone in his office and allowed himself 5 full minutes to feel the weight of what he had just set in motion. Then he closed the folder, set it in his desk drawer, and returned to the shipping manifests, as though the axis his world turned on had not just shifted beneath him. But his hands, resting on the keyboard, still were not steady. And the name, written in block letters on a standard employment form, burned in his mind like a brand. Kendra Jovovich. The woman he had loved when he was too young to understand what love would cost. The woman whose career he had destroyed simply by existing in her life. The woman who had disappeared 7 years ago after federal agents questioned her for 14 hours about a man she had believed was a graduate student with family money and good intentions. She was here, and she was applying to clean his floors. 7 years earlier, Jin Wu had not intended to fall in love at Massachusetts Institute of Technology. He had been sent to Boston with a specific mandate: complete an economics degree, establish a legitimate business presence in North America, and create corporate structures clean enough to move his family's logistics operations through U.S. ports without triggering the scrutiny that had been tightening around their networks in Seoul and Hong Kong. Love was not part of the operational plan. But Kendra Jovovich had walked into the Hayden Library on an October evening during his junior year, sat down at the table across from him without asking permission, spread out a thermodynamics textbook that looked dense enough to stop bullets, and proceeded to solve problem sets with the kind of focused intensity that made the air around her seem to hum at a different frequency than the rest of the room. Jin Wu had looked up from his microeconomics reading once, intending only to glance, and found himself watching the way her pen moved across the page. Quick, confident, pausing only when an equation required actual thought rather than mere execution. She had looked up after 20 minutes and caught him staring. "Do you need something?" she asked. Not rudely, just directly. "No," Jin Wu said. "Sorry." She returned to her work. He returned to his. But something had shifted in the space between their tables. Some small acknowledgement that they were now two people who had noticed each other, rather than two strangers who happened to occupy the same square footage. 3 weeks later, she asked him for help with a statistics problem her study group had been arguing about for an hour. Jin Wu looked at the equation. He explained the flaw in their approach in 4 sentences. Kendra stared at him. "You're not an econ major." "I am, actually." "Then why do you know measure theory?" He smiled slightly. "I read widely." That became their routine, Tuesdays and Thursdays in the library. Sometimes she asked questions, sometimes he did. More often, they simply worked in parallel, the comfortable silence of two people who understood that intelligence was not a performance and did not require an audience. By winter break, they were meeting for coffee. By spring semester, Jin Wu had begun structuring his week around the hours he knew she would be in the library. And by late April, on an evening when the last of the snow had finally melted and the city smelled like wet pavement and new leaves, Kendra had kissed him outside a coffee shop in Central Square and said, "I don't usually do this." "Do what?" Jin Wu asked. "Get involved with someone when I should be focused on other things." "Then don't," he said. She had looked at him with those dark, steady eyes that missed nothing. Too late. For 6 months, Jin Wu had lived in 2 worlds. In one world, he was Jin Park, a thoughtful economics student who helped his girlfriend study for the chemical engineering exams that would determine her graduate school prospects. He attended her thesis presentation. He met her roommate. He learned that she took her coffee black, that she had grown up in Detroit with a single mother who cleaned office buildings to put her through school, and that she believed, genuinely, without cynicism, that hard work and talent would eventually align to create the life a person deserved. In the other world, he was Jin Wu Park, the American operational liaison for a network that moved electronics, pharmaceuticals, and occasionally things that were neither, through ports in Seattle, Los Angeles, and Newark. He took calls at 2 in the morning from men who spoke in code. He signed documents that created companies that existed only on paper. He attended meetings in hotel conference rooms where everyone was polite and no one used last names. He believed he could keep those worlds separate. He had been wrong. The mistake had been small: a shipment flagged at customs, a warehouse address that appeared in the wrong database, an investigation that widened faster than his family's lawyers could contain it. Federal agents had traced a logistics company back to a warehouse Jin Wu had taken Kendra to see once, just once, because she had been curious about supply chain operations, and he had been stupid enough to think showing her a facility that processed legitimate electronics would be safe. The warehouse had been clean, but it shared a parent corporation with 3 other facilities that were not. When the agents came, they did not arrest Kendra. They questioned her. For 14 hours, in a federal building in downtown Boston, they asked her about Jin Wu Park, about the warehouse, about whether she had ever witnessed anything unusual, anything illegal, anything that suggested the man she was dating was part of an organization under investigation for racketeering and international smuggling. She told them the truth. She knew nothing. They did not charge her, but they built a file, and that file, flagged in every background check system used by engineering firms, defense contractors, and Fortune 500 companies, had followed her ever since. Jin Wu found out 3 days after she was released. By then, she had already blocked his number, moved out of her apartment, and withdrawn from the graduate program she had been accepted into. His people found her once, briefly, working at a file storage company outside Hartford. When Jin Wu tried to approach her, she had looked at him with an expression that contained no anger, no tears, nothing but a flat, exhausted finality. "Don't," she had said. "Don't apologize. Don't explain. Just stay away from me." He had honored that. For 7 years he had honored that. And now she was back. Kendra Jovovich arrived for her first shift on a Thursday evening at 5:43. She entered through the service entrance on the building's east side, the one used by delivery drivers and maintenance crews, and checked in with the security desk using the temporary ID badge Human Resources had issued the day before. The guard on duty, a man in his 50s named Leonard who had worked building security for 12 years, glanced at her badge and nodded her through without conversation. Kendra took the service elevator to the 3rd floor, where the custodial supervisor's office was located. Terrence Brooks was waiting for her. He was a lean man in his early 40s with graying hair and the calm, efficient demeanor of someone who had spent decades managing people who were rarely acknowledged and never celebrated. He shook her hand, gestured to the chair across from his desk, and slid a folder toward her. "Uniform specs, supply protocols, floor assignments," Terrence said. "You'll be working executive floors, 40th through 44. Evening shift, 6 to 2. Weekends rotational." Kendra opened the folder and scanned the documentation. "Security clearance?" "Already processed. You'll get your permanent badge Monday." Terrence leaned back in his chair and studied her with the particular attention of someone conducting an assessment he would never state aloud. "You're overqualified for this." Kendra met his eyes without deflecting. "I'm qualified to do the job you're hiring me for. That's what matters." Terrence nodded slowly. "Fair enough. Few things you should know about the executive floors. You won't see many people after 7. The ones you do see mostly won't acknowledge you. Don't take it personally. Just do the work, stay out of the way during active meetings, and if the CEO's office light is on, skip it and come back at the end of your shift." Kendra's expression did not change, but something in her stillness sharpened. "The CEO works late?" "Most nights." Terrence handed her a key card. "This gets you into the executive floors and the supply rooms. Don't lose it. Replacements take 2 weeks and come out of payroll." She took the card. "Understood." Terrence stood. "Come on. I'll show you the supply setup." The 42nd floor was silence and glass. Kendra pushed her cart out of the service elevator and into a corridor lit by recessed lighting that cast no shadows. The walls were floor-to-ceiling windows on one side, white stone on the other. The air smelled faintly of leather and something else she couldn't name. Money, maybe, or the particular kind of emptiness that came with spaces designed to impress rather than comfort. She had worked in buildings like this before, not as an engineer. That life had ended 7 years ago in a federal interrogation room, but as invisible labor. The person who emptied trash bins after strategy meetings. The person who wiped down conference tables where decisions worth millions were made by people who never learned her name. She had made peace with it, or she had convinced herself she had made peace with it, which amounted to the same thing in practice. Kendra worked methodically. Trash bins first, then surfaces, then floors. She moved through the corridor with the efficiency of someone who had learned that the fastest way through a shift was to stop thinking of it as anything other than a sequence of tasks to complete. By 8 o'clock, she had finished the main hallway and the 2 conference rooms on the north side. By 8:30, she had reached the corner office at the end of the hall. The door was closed. The light inside was on. Terrence's instruction had been clear. If the CEO's office was occupied, skip it. Kendra was turning her cart around when the door opened. Jin Wu Park stood in the doorway. For a moment, one terrible, suspended moment, neither of them moved. He looked different, older, though not in a way that diminished him. His face had lost the softness she remembered from college, replaced by the sharp angles that came with years of carrying weight that wasn't physical. His hair was cut shorter. His suit was charcoal gray and fit him the way expensive things fit people who wear them without thought. But his eyes were the same, dark, unreadable, watching her with the same focused attention he had given her across library tables 7 years ago. Kendra's breath did not catch. She had trained herself, over years of practice, not to let her body betray what her mind was processing. But her hands tightened slightly on the handle of the cart. Jin Wu looked at her the way you look at someone you thought was gone forever and had resigned yourself to never seeing again. "Kendra," he said. Not a question, not surprise, just her name, spoken quietly, as though testing whether saying it aloud would make her disappear. She did not answer immediately. She looked at him, at the man who had once explained regression analysis to her in a coffee shop, who had kissed her in the rain outside a bookstore, who had inadvertently destroyed her career by being exactly who he was. "Mr. Park," she said finally, professionally, the way you address someone who signs your paychecks. Something moved across his face, not quite pain, not quite regret, something older and more complicated. "Come in," he said. "I'm working." "I know. Come in anyway." It was not a request, but it was not quite a command either. It was something in between, an offer wrapped in inevitability. Kendra looked down the hallway. It was empty. The cameras in the corners blinked their small red lights, indifferent and constant. She made a decision. She stepped inside. Jin Wu closed the door behind her. The office was larger than she had expected. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the city's southern corridor, the lights below reduced to patterns, distant and abstract. His desk was glass and steel, its surface clear except for a laptop and a single folder. He did not sit. He stood near the window with his hands in his pockets and looked at her the way you look at something fragile that you have been given one chance not to break. "You didn't have to take this job," Jin Wu said. Kendra kept her voice level. "Yes, I did. There are other buildings in Seattle. Not ones that called me back." He absorbed that without expression. The silence between them stretched, not hostile, but weighted with years neither of them had the language to navigate yet. "How long have you been doing custodial work?" he asked finally. 3 years. "And before that?" "Does it matter?" "Yes." Kendra set her jaw. File clerk for 18 months. Warehouse inventory before that. Overnight stock at a grocery distribution center in Tacoma. Before that, I applied to 47 engineering positions over 2 years and received 47 variations of the same rejection letter. Jin Wu's expression did not change, but his hands, resting in his pockets, tightened into fists. "Because of the file," he said quietly. "Because of a file that says I was romantically involved with someone under federal investigation," Kendra corrected. "It doesn't matter that I didn't know. It doesn't matter that I was never charged. It matters that the file exists and that every background check flags it." She said this without bitterness. Bitterness required energy she had learned to allocate elsewhere. Jin Wu turned toward the window. Below them, the city moved through its patterns, traffic flowing and halting, lights turning on and off in buildings where people worked and lived and had no idea that 42 stories above them, 2 people were standing in an office, reckoning with the distance between who they had been and who they had become. "I looked for you," Jin Wu said. "After Boston, I tried to find you." "I know. You made it very difficult." "I had to." He was quiet for a long moment. Then he turned back to face her. "I'm sorry." Kendra looked at him, at the man who had been 21 and brilliant and dangerous in ways she had not understood until it was too late. "I don't need your apology," she said. "I need this job. So if you're going to fire me because of who I used to be to you, do it now. But if you're not, then let me finish my shift." Jin Wu's jaw tightened. "I'm not firing you." "Then I'm leaving." She turned toward the door. Her hand touched the handle. "You shouldn't be cleaning floors, Kendra." She stopped. She did not turn around. "You don't get to decide what I should be doing," she said quietly. "Not anymore." Then she walked out. Jin Wu stood alone in his office for a long time after she left, looking at the door she had closed behind her and feeling the weight of 7 years settle over him, like a debt he had always known would come due, but had never figured out how to pay. Colin Driscoll had worked in operations management for 11 years. He was good at his job in the way that people are good at jobs, when competence and ambition align just enough to produce results without requiring imagination. He managed vendor contracts, supervised building logistics, and maintained relationships with the regional supply chain coordinators who kept the company's shipping network running smoothly. He was also the kind of man who measured his own value by the number of people he could speak to dismissively without consequence. Kendra had been on his radar since her second week. Not because she had done anything wrong. She had not. She was punctual, thorough, and invisible in exactly the way custodial staff were expected to be. But Driscoll had noticed her, the way certain men notice women who do not perform deference as a reflex, and he had decided, in the way small men decide such things, that she needed to understand her place. It started with small corrections. A corner that had already been cleaned, flagged for re-cleaning. A trash bin allegedly missed, though Kendra's logs showed otherwise. A hallway floor that Driscoll claimed still showed scuff marks, even after she had mopped it twice. Each time, Kendra responded without argument. She re-cleaned the corner. She double-checked the bins. She mopped the floor a third time. She did not complain to Terrence. She did not escalate to HR. She simply absorbed the friction and moved on, the way water moves around stones. Jin Wu noticed. He noticed because his office overlooked the operations floor, and because he had spent 2 weeks watching Kendra move through the building with the same quiet competence she had carried through problem sets in a library 7 years ago, and because he recognized the particular quality of stillness she carried when Driscoll stopped her in hallways to deliver corrections that were not corrections, but performances of authority. On a Monday evening, Jin Wu watched from his window as Driscoll intercepted Kendra outside the executive conference room. He could not hear the conversation, but he could see Driscoll gesturing toward a section of floor, could see Kendra nod once, retrieve her mop, and clean an area she had already cleaned 30 minutes earlier. Driscoll stood nearby, scrolling through his phone, not looking at her, but making certain she understood he was watching. Jin Wu set down the report he had been reading. He stood up. He walked out of his office and down the hallway with the particular calm that people who knew him had learned to recognize as more dangerous than anger. "Mr. Driscoll?" Driscoll looked up. His expression shifted immediately into something more alert, more careful. "Mr. Park, I was just—" "You were wasting her time," Jin Wu said. His voice was quiet, even, the kind of quiet that made the air in the hallway feel thinner. "Go back to your office." Driscoll's mouth opened as if to explain. Then he looked at Jin Wu's face and thought better of it. He nodded and walked away. Jin Wu turned to Kendra. She was standing beside her cart, mop still in hand, watching him with an expression that revealed nothing. "You don't need to do that," she said. Jin Wu met her eyes. "Yes, I do." He walked back to his office without elaborating. Kendra stood in the hallway for a moment, looking at the space where he had been, and felt something she had not allowed herself to feel in 7 years. Not gratitude exactly, but something close. The algorithm failed at 2:17 in the morning. By 6 a.m., Jin Wu's entire engineering team was assembled in the crisis center on the 41st floor. A windowless room lined with monitors displaying shipping routes, port congestion data, and the cascading errors now spreading through the logistics network like cracks through glass. Elliot Zhang, the lead systems architect, stood at the whiteboard explaining the problem to a room that already understood its severity. "The optimization function is failing," Elliot said. He pointed to a dense cluster of equations covering the left side of the board. "Somewhere in the weighted probability matrix, there's a recursive error. The algorithm is trying to optimize routes based on conditions that no longer exist by the time it calculates them." Jin Wu stood at the head of the table, arms crossed, watching the board with the focused attention of someone for whom every minute of delay translated directly into millions of dollars in stalled shipments. "How long to isolate it?" Jin Wu asked. Elliot hesitated. "We don't know. We've been running diagnostics since 3 a.m. The error is buried somewhere in the decision tree. Could be hours. Could be longer." Around the table, 6 engineers sat with laptops open, typing, testing, running simulations that continued to fail in variations of the same way. Jin Wu was about to speak when someone knocked on the door. It was Terrence. He stood in the doorway looking uncomfortable, the way people look when they are interrupting something important and are uncertain whether they have the authority to do so. "I apologize for the interruption," Terrence said, "but one of my staff was cleaning the hallway outside. She saw the whiteboard through the glass and asked if she could take a look." The room went silent. Jin Wu's expression did not change. "Which staff member?" "Kendra Jovovich." Elliot looked at Jin Wu. Several of the junior engineers exchanged glances. Jin Wu walked to the door. Kendra stood in the hallway in her uniform, arms crossed, looking at the whiteboard through the glass wall with the particular focus of someone reading something they recognize. "You think you can solve this?" Jin Wu asked. She looked at him. "I think I can tell you where the error is." He opened the door wider. "Show me." Kendra walked to the whiteboard. The engineers shifted in their seats. One of them, a young man named Ryan Briggs, who had been with the company less than a year, leaned over to whisper something to the person beside him. Kendra ignored them. She picked up a marker, studied the equations for 45 seconds, and then wrote a single line at the bottom of the board. Lambda of t weight function collapses at lag intervals greater than 48 hours when delta p crosses threshold in nonlinear feedback loop. She set the marker down and stepped back. "Your probability weights are failing when processing time exceeds 2 days," she said. Her voice was calm, matter of fact, the voice of someone explaining a fact rather than demonstrating intelligence. "The algorithm doesn't account for nonlinear escalation in port delays. It's optimizing for conditions that no longer exist by the time the calculation's complete." Elliot stared at the board. He stood up, walked to the white, and read the line again. Then he pulled out his phone and started running calculations. 3 minutes later, he looked up. "She's right." The room erupted into controlled chaos. Engineers typing, pulling up code, running the correction through the system. 4 minutes after that, the error flag in the monitoring system cleared. The algorithm resumed normal function. The crisis was over. Kendra turned to leave. Jin Wu caught her arm gently. "Wait." She stopped. "Why didn't you say something before?" he asked quietly. "Why didn't you tell anyone you could do this?" Kendra looked at him with the same steady calm she had carried since the first time he saw her name on an application 2 weeks ago. "Because no one was asking," she said. Then she walked out. Jin Wu called the meeting for 2 o'clock. Present were his CFO, Lillian Cross, his head of security, Lucas Lyle, his operations director, and the 3 members who handled North American oversight. Also present, at Jin Wu's explicit instruction, was Kendra Jovovich. She sat at the far end of the conference table in her uniform because she had come directly from her shift and had not been given time to change. The members looked at her with varying degrees of confusion. Jin Wu did not waste time. "This is Kendra Jovovich," he said. "She has a degree in chemical engineering from MIT. She solved the logistics algorithm failure this morning in under 1 minute, a failure that our entire engineering team spent 4 hours trying to isolate." He slid a folder across the table to Lillian. "For the past 3 weeks, she has been working as a custodian on the executive floors. She has been doing that because 7 years ago, she was flagged in a federal investigation. She was never charged. She was never implicated. But the file exists, and it has followed her through every background check since. Lillian opened the folder. She read in silence. When she looked up, her expression had shifted into something colder. Who was she connected to in the investigation? Lillian asked. Jin Wu met her eyes. Me. The room absorbed this. I was 21, Jin Wu continued. She had no knowledge of my family's operations. When the investigation began, she severed contact and disappeared. I destroyed her career without intending to. And now she is here, cleaning floors in a building I own, because I did not fix it when I should have. He turned to Kendra. I am offering you a position. Systems analyst. Full clearance. Salary commensurate with your education and capability, not your resume gap. You will work directly with the logistics team. Kendra looked at him without speaking. You do not owe me anything, Jin Wu said, but I owe you this. The room waited. Kendra was quiet for a long time. Then she said, I have a daughter. She is 6. I cannot work the hours I used to. Then we build the role around the hours you can work, Jin Wu said. Lillian leaned forward. For the record, I support this. We just watched her solve in 1 minute what our engineering team could not solve in 4 hours. If we are not hiring her, we are making a mistake. Kendra looked down at her hands. When she spoke, her voice was quieter. I need to think about it. Jin Wu nodded. Take the time you need. She stood and left the room. 6 months later. Kendra Jovovich's office was on the 41st floor, 3 doors down from systems engineering. It was small, but it had a window. On her desk sat a photo of her daughter, Amara, and a coffee mug that read, Progress over Perfection, a gift from Lillian Cross, who had become something close to a mentor in the months since Kendra started. The logistics algorithm she had fixed in 1 minute that morning 6 months ago had since been restructured based on her recommendations. The company had saved an estimated $218 million in operational costs. Kendra had been credited in the internal report. It was the first time her name had appeared in a professional document in 7 years without a red flag beside it. Jin Wu stopped by her office most afternoons, sometimes with problems the engineering team was stuck on, sometimes with nothing at all. They did not talk about the past often, but it was there, in the room with them, the way old foundations remain beneath new construction. One evening, as Kendra was packing her bag to pick up Amara from after-school care, Jin Wu leaned in the doorway. Do you ever regret it? He asked. Regret what? Taking the job. Coming back into this world. Kendra zipped her bag and looked at him. No. Why not? Because I am good at it, she said simply. And because my daughter gets to see me do something I am good at. That matters more than what it cost to get here. Jin Wu nodded slowly. For what it is worth, I am glad you stayed. Kendra smiled, small but real. So am I. She walked past him toward the elevator. He watched her go, the way he had watched her leave 7 years ago. Except this time, she was not disappearing. This time, she was exactly where she was supposed to be. If you made it all the way here, you are precisely the person I create this content for. I want you to write in the comments, your worth is not determined by who underestimated you. And comment where you're watching from. Please hit the like button. It communicates to YouTube that this story matters enough to share, and it puts it in front of someone out there who needs to hear it today. Thank you for caring about these characters as genuinely as I do. I will see you in the very next one.